Nobody in the Philippines had ever done what Eala did this past March. Nobody. Not in the entire history of professional tennis in that country. She climbed to world number 29, shattering every record her nation had on the books, and she did it by beating some of the most decorated women in the sport along the way. But here's the part nobody saw coming. After that career-high peak, her ranking plummeted 16 spots in a single week. And now, as the clay season opens in Europe, Eala finds herself at a crossroads that could define the next chapter of her career. Let me take you back, though, because you need to understand the full arc of what has happened in 2026 so far to truly appreciate what is about to unfold on those red dirt courts in Austria, Germany, Spain, and France. The year started in Auckland at the ASB Classic. Eala arrived as the fourth seed, a new experience for a player who spent most of 2024 hovering outside the top 100. Her opening match was against Donna Vekic, the Olympic silver medalist, and it immediately tested her resolve. Eala dropped the first set. Down 4-6, most players at her age would have tightened up. Instead, she loosened her grip on the racket, figuratively speaking, and started swinging with abandon. She took the second set 6-4, and the third set the same scoreline. It was the type of comeback that signals a player who has moved past the mental fragility that so often plagues young competitors on tour. She swept through Magda Linette in the quarterfinals in straight sets before meeting Sinew Wang in the semis. That match was a heartbreaker. Eala actually won the first set 7-5 after being down 0-4 to start, clawing back in a display of fight that had the Auckland crowd buzzing. But Wang found her range in sets 2 and 3, and Eala fell 5-7, 4-6. Still, a semi-final in her first event of the year? That's a statement. From New Zealand, the tour shifted to Australia, and Eala stepped onto the Melbourne hard courts for her main draw debut at the Australian Open. The moment was enormous. First Filipino to compete in the main draw of the Australian Open in the modern era. First round. Alicia Parks. And it ended in disappointment, a quick exit that reminded everyone that Grand Slam tennis operates on a different frequency. The pressure, the surface, the magnitude of those first few rounds when you are unseeded and every opponent knows your name now. Parks handled the occasion better on the day, and Eala packed her bags. But the thing about Eala in 2026 is that she has refused to let any single result define her trajectory. She moved to the Philippine Women's Open, a WTA125 event on home soil, where the crowd was practically electric. There she reached the quarterfinals before Camila Osorio ended her run. Then came the Middle East swing, and this is where things got serious. Abu Dhabi. WTA 500. First round against Zeynep Sonmez was relatively clean, a 6-4, 6-3 win that got her feet underneath her. The second round against Alexandra Sasnovich, though, was absolute chaos. Down a set and trailing 0-4 in the second, Eala was on the verge of total collapse. Sasnovich was hitting her lines, the Belarusian's flat, penetrating ground strokes making Eala look like she was stuck in quicksand. And then, something shifted. There is no other way to describe it except that Eala simply decided she was not going to lose that match. She fought back to win the second set 6-4, and in the third, she fell behind again at 2-5, saved match point, and somehow dragged the set into a tiebreak which she took 7-5. The match lasted nearly 3 hours. The sort of battle that either destroys a young player's legs for the rest of the week or forges something unbreakable inside them. For Eala, it was the latter, at least temporarily. She lost in the quarterfinals to Ekaterina Alexandrova, the second seed, 6-3, 6-3, but the fight she showed against Sasnovich lingered in the memory. Qatar was a quick exit, a round of 64 loss that reminded everyone the tour is relentless and not every week can be a highlight reel. But Dubai. Dubai was something else entirely. The Dubai Duty-Free Tennis Championships is a WTA 1000 event. The biggest names in the world show up. Sabalenka, Gauff, Swiatek, Paolini, Rybakina. And there was Eala, with a wild card in her pocket, drawing Hailey Baptiste in the first round. Baptiste retired with Eala leading 6-4, 0-1. A fortunate break, sure, but fortune favors those who position themselves to receive it. Then came the second round, and the opponent was Jasmine Paolini. Now, Paolini was the world number 8 at the time, a French Open finalist, an Olympic medalist, one of the most improved players on tour over the previous 2 years. And Eala took her apart. 6-1 in the first set. That is not a typo. 6-1 against a top 10 player at a premier event. Paolini had no answers. Eala's left-handed forehand was finding angles that the Italian simply could not cover. Her movement was precise, her decision-making clinical. The second set was tighter, going to a tiebreak, but Eala sealed it 7-5. Third career victory over a top 10 opponent, following her wins over Madison Keys and Iga Swiatek at the Miami Open a year earlier. She beat Sorana Cîrstea in the third round, 7-5, 6-4, and pushed her way into the quarterfinals where Coco Gauff was waiting. Gauff won that match cleanly, 0-6, 2-6. It was a reality check. But context matters. Eala had accumulated enough points through that run, combined with her earlier results, to rocket up to a career-high world number 29 when the rankings updated on March 16th. The first Filipino to break into the WTA Top 30. The first of multiple wins over top 10 opponents and major champions. The first to reach a tour-level final in the Open era, dating back to her Eastbourne WTA 125 runner-up finish in 2025. She was, by every measure, writing an entirely new chapter for Philippine tennis. The Sunshine Swing followed. Indian Wells, another WTA 1000 event, and this time Eala arrived seeded. 31st seed, but still seeded at Indian Wells. For a player who entered the 2025 Miami Open as a wild card ranked 140th in the world, the progression was staggering. She received a first-round bye and then drew Diana Yastremska, a former Grand Slam semi-finalist known for her power and volatility. It went 3 sets, 7-5, 4-6, 7-5, with Eala having to dig deep into that same well of resilience she had been building all season. Yastremska's serve was thunderous, but Eala's return game was up to the task, redirecting pace and neutralizing the Ukrainians' biggest weapon. The third round brought Gauff again, and this time the script was different. Eala dominated the first set 6-2, breaking Gauff's serve repeatedly and making the American look uncomfortable. Early in the second set, with Eala leading 2-0, Gauff retired due to a left arm injury. It was only the second time in Gauff's career she had retired from a WTA match. Some might argue the result carries an asterisk, but Eala was clearly the better player on court that night. She had 26 fewer unforced errors at the point Gauff stopped playing. Her discipline from the baseline was exemplary. Linda Noskova ended the run in the round of 16. 6-2, 6-0. A comprehensive loss that exposed, once again, the gap between Eala's best and the level required to consistently trouble the tour's elite ball strikers. Noskova was precise, aggressive, and unrelenting. The match was over before Eala could settle into any rhythm. Then Miami. The tournament where everything changed a year ago, when Eala arrived as a wild card, knocked off Volinets, Ostapenko Keys, and Swiatek in succession before falling to Pegula in a 3-set semifinal that remains one of the most watched WTA matches in Filipino television history. This year, Eala had 390 points to defend from that magical run. She beat Laura Siegemund and Magda Linette to reach the round of 16, the Linette match producing a tight 7-6 tiebreak in the second set that showcased Eala's improving net play. But Karolina Muchová was waiting, and the Czech was in no mood to let the story continue. 6-0, 6-2. 39 minutes. It was clinical dismantlement, the kind of loss that stings not because it was competitive and you just missed, but because you never got started. The ranking fallout was predictable and painful. From 29 to 45. 16 spots gone because the points from last year's semifinal fell off the ledger, replaced by a round of 16 finish. This is the cruel mathematics of the WTA ranking system. You are always chasing your past self, and if your past self had a dream week, you better have an equally dreamy one to hold your position. But here is where the story pivots, and here is why the clay season matters so much for Alex Eala in 2026. She has only 70 ranking points to defend from now until the end of the French Open in mid-June. 70. That is almost nothing. Last year on clay, her results were modest. She won a single match at Madrid and did little elsewhere. This means the ranking floor is low. Every single win she picks up on the red dirt over the next 10 weeks is essentially free real estate in the ranking system. A deep run at even one of the upcoming events could send her screaming back toward the top 30 and potentially higher. Her schedule is ambitious. The Linz Open in Austria starts on April 6th, a WTA 500 event where she enters the main draw as the 7th seed. 500 ranking points are available to the champion, and a field that includes Alexandrova, Ostapenko, Karolina Pliskova, and Emma Navarro represents serious competition, but also a navigable path for a player of Eala's ability. Then Stuttgart, the WTA 500 in Germany, where she has entered the qualifying draw as the second highest-ranked qualifier behind Magdalena Frech. The fact that she chose Stuttgart over the less demanding Open de Rouen in France says everything about her mentality. She wants to face the best. Sabalenka, Gauff, Rybakina are all in this Stuttgart draw. Eala is not running from the fire. She is walking straight into it. After Stuttgart comes Madrid, one of the most prestigious WTA 1000 events on the calendar and, this year, being held for the first time at Real Madrid's Bernabeu Stadium. Then likely Rome, another WTA 1000, and then Roland Garros. The French Open. The Grand Slam played entirely on clay. If Eala can pick up 5 or 6 wins across this stretch, she will almost certainly climb back into the top 30. If she has a deep run at any of the bigger events, the top 20 becomes realistic. And if Roland Garros goes well, the conversation around her shifts entirely from promising rising star to legitimate contender. Now, here is the tactical analysis that I think gets overlooked when people talk about Eala and clay. Historically, clay has not been her most productive surface. Her biggest results have come on hard courts. Miami, Indian Wells, Dubai, Auckland. All hard court venues. The slower clay surface changes the geometry of every rally, adds more spin to the ball, makes the points longer, and penalizes players who rely on clean winners from the back of the court. But there are elements of Eala's game that could actually translate extremely well to clay if she adjusts her approach. First, her left-handed forehand generates natural spin that kicks higher on clay, which could be devastating against right-handed opponents who struggle with balls jumping into their backhand side. The combination of topspin and the natural lefty angle creates a shot that most players simply do not see often enough to feel comfortable returning. Second, her movement. Eala has shown throughout 2026 that she can hang in extended rallies. The Sasnovich match in Abu Dhabi, the Yastremska match at Indian Wells, the Linette tiebreak at Miami. These were all physical encounters that demanded exceptional footwork and court coverage. On clay, where sliding is an essential skill, a player who moves well can extend their reach by a full step in every direction. Third, her mental resilience. Clay demands patience. Points are longer, errors more forgiving because the surface absorbs pace, and matches often become wars of attrition. Eala has demonstrated repeatedly in 2026 that she can survive those wars. The concern, though, is the serve. Multiple analysts have pointed to Eala's serve as the area most in need of improvement. On hard courts, a mediocre serve can be masked by the speed of the surface and the subsequent short rallies. On clay, a weak serve gets neutralized almost entirely. Opponents have time to read the delivery, set up their return position, and dictate from the first shot. If Eala wants to go deep in Linz, Stuttgart, Madrid, or Roland Garros, she will need her first serve percentage to stay above 60% consistently, and she will need to develop more variety in placement to keep returners guessing. What makes Eala's clay court preparation different this year is her training base. She returned to the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca after Miami, spending the last 2 weeks working on the indoor red clay courts at the facility where she has trained since she was 13 years old. There is a certain poetry in that. The academy, founded by the greatest clay court player who ever lived, serving as the launching pad for a young Filipina who is about to begin the most important clay season of her career. Her coach, Daniel Gomez, has been with her throughout this journey, and the continuity of that partnership gives Eala a tactical stability that many young players on tour lack. They know each other's language. They know when to push and when to protect. Andy Roddick, the former world #1, interviewed Eala on his Served podcast recently, and his reaction was telling. "I'm sitting here at 43 years old, having been in this tennis game for a long time, and I'm going, there's no way I could ever be that pragmatic, that self-aware. Especially in the eye of the popularity storm and the responsibility that comes with that position," Roddick said. He called Eala a gift to the sport. Coming from a man who has seen every kind of tennis player over 3 decades in and around the game, that is not empty praise. The responsibility Roddick referenced is real and enormous. Eala does not just represent herself on court. She carries the hopes of over 100 million Filipinos who watch her matches with the same fervor that they bring to Manny Pacquiao boxing bouts. Every match she plays trends on Philippine social media within minutes. Every win produces newspaper front pages in Manila. Every loss generates a national conversation about what went wrong and what needs to change. She has spoken openly about this weight. "I recognize that I'm blessed to be living my life. I've earned it. I've definitely earned it. I've put in the work. But I think it's so important to be grateful for what you have. I've witnessed poverty in my surroundings. I don't take for granted anything, especially family and my team and the opportunities I'm able to have. That awareness is not just admirable. It is strategically valuable. A player who carries pressure gracefully tends to perform better in pressure moments." Eala's record in tiebreaks and decisive third sets in 2026 supports this. When the stakes are highest, she has more often than not found a way to compete at her peak rather than shrink. The next 8 weeks will tell us whether Alex Eala's 2026 season becomes something truly historic or simply very good. A 14-8 record through the hard court swings is respectable by any standard. She has earned nearly $500,000 in prize money already. She has beaten a top 10 player in straight sets at a premier event. She has reached the round of 16 at both WTA 1000 events in the Sunshine Swing. She has achieved the highest ranking any Filipino has ever held in professional tennis. But clay is the question mark. It is the surface where she has the most to prove and, paradoxically, the least to lose in terms of ranking points. That combination of freedom and opportunity is dangerous for the rest of the draw at Linz. It is dangerous for the qualifiers at Stuttgart. It is dangerous for whoever draws her in Madrid. Because if there is one thing Alex Eala has demonstrated with unwavering consistency since she first stunned the tennis world at Miami in March of 2025, it is that she is at her most dangerous when everyone counts her out. When the scoreboard says 0-4 in the second set. When the rankings say 45 instead of 29. When the surface is unfamiliar and the points are long and the margins are thin. That is precisely when this 20-year-old left-hander from the Philippines tends to remind the entire WTA Tour that she did not come here to participate. She came here to compete. And on clay, beginning this very week in Linz, we are about to find out just how far that competitive fire can carry her.